Good evening. My name is Richard Benitez. I will be hosting this professional development session. It'll be regarding the social justice standards in the classroom, but specifically, I'll be doing this through the lens of my own PE classroom. Um, and one more time, my name is Richard Benitez. I'll talk about my background really quickly in this slide. I've been working in education for 6 years. My first 2 years as a long-term sub at two different schools before becoming an elementary PE teacher for 2 years, and more recently 2 years as a middle school PE teacher. I've taught well over 2,000 different students when I do the math. When you are a PE teacher at an elementary school here in the Palmdale School District, you basically teach every single student at the school. So that was my elementary experience, and I'm currently working at my old middle school here in my hometown of East Palmdale. And it's been a blast. It's been a heck of a career. I thoroughly am passionate and enjoy this career of teaching. And as this slide explains, I have a pretty wide ranged background. Maybe not a veteran career just yet, at 6 years, but I have a good bit of experience with elementary and middle school PE, differentiation, curriculum, and overall the planning and implementation of these standards that I'll be talking about throughout this session. So, what are the social justice standards? This is a portfolio document that was originally given to me by one of our mentors as a resource. But what for, you may ask? This was all at the Genius Initiative conference. This was a several session conference that I attended down in Los Angeles by the board County Office of Education at the Laco building. And at this conference, at the Genius Initiative, the main focus is macroing a lot of, I guess, impact and changing curriculum and diversification, training, and much, much more, but mostly at the macro level. So this impacted state curriculum, state policy. One of our speakers there was even the former special advisor to the Secretary of Education of the United States. So a lot of peer professionals, a lot of great mentors, but the one that specifically I reached out to, I asked them the simple question, how do we micro all of this that we're learning and discussing? How do we go in the opposite direction? How do I focus on social justice and just choosing restorative justice over punitive justice? How do I shrink that all down to a PE classroom? And they thankfully showed me this resource, as I said, the social justice standards. A quick breakdown before we go into more detail, as I believe this would be tremendously helpful for any teacher dealing with classroom management. Um, Four domains that we'll be discussing before we get more into the anchor standards. We want to discuss all 20 anchor standards, but we'll be discussing them through the lens of each domain and how it applies to my classroom. So the first four, identity, diversity, justice, and action. Here they are a bit more, I guess, exemplified. And as I mentioned, I'm not going to list all 20 of them. I'll just choose one that is primary and one that I apply regularly to my classroom's instruction that I discuss about through my curriculum, through my beginning of a new unit presentations so that my students understand what is our focus beyond just California state PE standards. What are our social justice standards that we'll also be practicing and discussing throughout the weeks of our each unit that we learn about throughout the school year. So the first one, identity. I always discuss with my students self-awareness. Essentially, that just means creating an atmosphere where you understand that, hey, sometimes people are having a bad day. Sometimes I'm having a bad day. Sometimes the teacher's having a bad day. Sometimes like, anything can happen. So just being a bit more socially cognitive of being patient, of realizing, hey, maybe I should give that classmate, that stranger, that friend, some space, and that way it'll help them ultimately achieve what we want to achieve in my PE classroom in terms of social justice standards and in terms of how they can take this with them into seventh and eighth grade once they are done with my grade level. Um, I currently teach sixth grade, by the way. Next one, another anchor standard would be under diversity, specifically empathy. So at this age group of middle school students, it's easy to, focus so much on self-interest and sometimes just being downright selfish with not only our emotions, but other people's emotions. So discussing the term of empathy, not only in the presentation, as I mentioned, but whenever I do experience a behavioral issue in class, I'll pull that student one-on-one to the side and explain to them, hey, uh, a good tactic we like to use in our district is CKH. So just asking the student, like, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? What should they be doing it? What are they going to do next? All these are great examples of slowly integrating and learning empathy through students' natural decision making as a middle schooler, and just realizing that these situations are going to happen, especially in a PE learning environment where, equipment is flying around, where students might get a bit more excited or competitive when results don't go their way. So just being a bit more empathetic with their neighbors essentially and realizing, oh, sometimes I have a bad day. Maybe others have a bad day too. Another anchor standard that we'll be discussing is under the justice domain, specifically empowerment. So, letting kids know in the opposite trajectory of what I just mentioned, hey, if you're having a great day, then, try to pass on that positivity. If you, and more in specific PE standards, if you are very advanced in what we are learning, then, you should be taking initiative after that to try to be a leader to your peers, try to reach out to them, ask them, hey, do you need help? Hey, do you want to try this instead? Of course, I try to take on that role as much as I can as the primary teacher, but in a classroom full of 40, and in my past years, I've taught up to 80 kids at once. It does help building and trying to teach students to head towards that direction of being not only their own leaders, but leaders for their peers. Taking that empowerment and building it into confidence and ability to say, you know what, I can help out here. I can take the lead here. A quick fun example I actually experienced today was one of my students that I meet for IEP meetings. The parents are always very concerned with their progress at these meetings, and I was telling them, rest assured, uh, the student is excellent in my class, and today they showed it once again by not only stopping a soccer scrimmage during PE from continuing, but he also made sure that his friends went to go check up on the student that had fallen down. So I think that's just an example of these social justice standards and not only its implementation, but its success that can pass on to the least likeliest of your students. Um, our last domain that we'll be discussing is action, and a characteristic example through anchor standards that I gave here for my class that resonates well is responsibility. Um, and I'll be discussing in the next slide as well, but responsibility plays a very important role in my class. I basically grade them a third on routines, which includes these responsibilities, but also the social justice standards that we've been discussing. So students should not only be aware of what they should be doing at any given moment, but they should also be leaders, as we talked about with justice. They should be empathetic to their classmates, as we discussed with diversity. And I mean, keeping these responsibilities also includes self-awareness as well. So I really own in and grade on this specific example, this specific domain and anchor standard because it is, I think, envelops a lot of what I'm trying to achieve with these students. Once again, this is not only a short-term piece in my class, this is long-term. This is how they will be acting in seventh grade and eighth grade with my coworkers in my department, still at my school. I tell students all the time, hey, what I try to teach you in class I want you guys to take with you, 10, 15 years from now when your friends ask you, hey, let's go play this sport at the beach. Are you going to be ready? Are you going to be prepared? But at the very least, you'll hopefully have that sense of feeling for initiative to put yourself in these situations where you might not feel comfortable, but at least you are comfortable dealing with these usually uncomfortable situations. So implementation into my classroom. The first initial reason why I reached out to my aforementioned mentor was because I wanted to, I guess, elevate and evolve my class because we do work on a lot of socialization, a lot of just social awareness and practice in that regard in PE. My best days of instruction are when I speak the least because the students are more automatic. And in essence, that's what PE should be, right? A lot of it should be less talking and more action, more activity, more doing and practicing these locomotor skills and movements. So in essence, I reached out to my mentor because I thought, hey, this is the perfect place to, micro all of the discussion we've been having at this conference and I can see where this can potentially take me, take my department, and just monitor it over the academic school year. So, as I mentioned in the last slide, routines is about a third of my students' grades. Participation, of course, is another third, and assessment, just to make sure that beyond, or not beyond, but prior to our social justice standards, to make sure that students are falling under alignment with our California State sixth grade PE standards. Um, and altogether, when you combine that with curriculum that is culturally relevant and engages students and promotes long-term physical education goals, that is ultimately the standard we're trying to achieve in PE. And as I mentioned and will mention in the following slides, the long-term plan is in regards to not only the their future adult health and exercise practices, but also their 1 to 2 year plan when they become seventh and eighth graders as well. So next,